What's up guys, it's your boy Onycs here and welcome back to the channel. The Outriders journey has been one hell of a ride and today we bring it full circle. From the chaos of Enoch to the icy wrath of Ereshkigal. This is it, the final chapter of our Outriders deep dive, Worldslayer. If you've been following the series since part 1, you already know how far we've come through Bailey's fall, Yayak's madness, and the aftermath that shaped the broken world. But Worldslayer? This takes everything to a whole new level. New zones, new gear, new systems, and one of the most intense campaigns in the entire series. If you're new here, welcome to the dojo. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like if you enjoy this content. And let me know in the comments which class builds you're running for Worldslayer. Pyro, Techno, Trickster, or the Dev. I'm building something special for each of them, and your feedback decides which comes next. Now, without further ado, let's get back into the video and seal the deal. This is only leading into something much bigger and something that we as Outriders fans at that time were not so sure we were ever gonna get, and that was a DLC. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to usher you into the final section of our video covering Worldslayer. Okay, if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, because you've got the tenacity of Yayak, our favorite and dying bastard. And trust me, you're gonna need it, because now we're stepping into the final section of this video. Enter Worldslayer. This DLC grips the ever-evolving world of Enoch and gives us some long-awaited answers to the base game's mysteries, but in true Outriders fashion, leaves just enough unanswered to keep the door open for a sequel. So, what is Worldslayer? In short, it's more of everything. More story, more loot, more ways to build your character, and more endgame to sink your teeth into. You can either start fresh from the base campaign or use the level 30 boost to jump straight into the Worldslayer storyline, kitted out and ready to fight. And this fight is against Ereshkigal, the deadliest altered we've faced yet, and possibly the first altered in Enoch's history. This campaign takes us through new locations, think frozen wastelands like Glacier's Edge, drowned ruins and Driftwater, and pits us against entirely new enemy types. But Worldslayer doesn't just stop at a few new maps and a villain, it rewires the core systems of Outriders. And here's what changes the game. Number 1, Pax trees. Think of them as extra branches to your skill tree, unlocking 2 new paths per class. You get Pax points through story progression, not grinding, and each node packs the punch of a major skill from the base tree. This lets you go deeper into your build or hybridize in ways that just weren't possible before. Number 2, the Ascension system. Once you've hit level 30, XP starts going into Ascension levels. There are 200 points total across 4 categories: Brutality, Endurance, Prowess, and Anomaly. And you can dump points to tweak cooldowns, boost health, or straight up crank your damage. It's a long-term progression system designed for the grind fiends among us. Number 3, Apocalypse tiers. Challenge tiers are gone, and in their place, Apocalypse tiers crank difficulty up to 40, raising the max gear level to 75. The kicker, Apocalypse gear has a 3rd mod slot. Yes, 3 mods. You can't craft it, it's drop only, so when it appears, it's pure dopamine. Number 4, new legendary sets. Every class gets fresh 5-piece legendary sets, plus some universal 3-piece sets. And yes, the set bonuses are nasty in the best possible way. Then there's the new endgame, the Trial of Tarya Gratar, that I'll get a little bit more into towards the end of the video. But for now, let's gut right into the story of Worldslayer.
It's another vision. They just keep getting worse.
Body rotting, open, frozen, shadows. She sees you. She sees you.
Who?
It's too late. You can't save her. You'll try. It'll consume you.
Worldslayer wastes no time yanking us straight into the deep freeze. Shauna leads us into the frozen tunnels of Glacier's Edge, the air thick with frost and silence, but for her, this isn't just a cave, it's a conduit. Suddenly she's hit with an overwhelming vision, fragments of civilization long gone, whispers of the Pax, and a towering figure in the shadows, Ereshkigal. She doesn't have to explain it, we can feel it. This isn't just some altered we're gonna face, this is the altered, the first in history, and she's tied to the fate of Enoch itself. Now, as you can see, we're already kind of into like the loom and gloom of the original theme of Outriders. However, this seems to be more of a last stand sort of situation going on, because we thought we took care of all the big bads up until this point. Turns out there was a bigger big bad that was still somewhere out there, and turns out she's worse than everyone else that we faced, but we just don't know to what extent as of now. It's important to kind of realize just how chronological the story is trying to go according to the events that have happened from the base game. And we see that all these events kind of roll into something a little bit bigger slightly after the drop pod resources have finally hit Enoch. Now, while this was meant to be more of a saving grace Hail Mary situation, it turns out this might be a last-ditch effort to kind of save what's left of humanity, because it seems like the anomaly isn't getting any better than we thought, and turns out it's getting 10 times as worse. So we're going back out into the outworld, trying to figure out what we're going to do about this anomaly situation, and whether there is a life beyond the storm, if there is anything to preserve, or is it just all going to go to dust just like Earth did right before the game started. And so, just like the base game, we start our journey over at Rift Town, and we have to speak to Shira. Now, unfortunately, things have negatively progressed in Rift Town since the drop pod resources were let down from outer space, and we come to a damaged and completely decimated Rift Town. But not only that, we see the casualties of war firsthand, and this kind of drives the story into a much more darker tone than before, because now this is more of not more of a redemption, but more like a revenge situation going on, because as things have gotten bad, people have gotten much worse, hearts have grown colder, and as you see in the first scene, Shira almost smokes Zahidi because he was talking to the other side. Now, he wasn't by any means trying to be like, play both sides or nothing. He was just sharing data with someone who was also sharing data with him to kind of figure out like, what's going on your side and what's going on our side. Things are not as the way we hoped they would be, because clearly something has gone completely awry. And so just like, the four sides happened to just stop the bullet mid-air like I'm the one. So it was quite an interesting thing to see this entire story play out the way it did. And now this kind of pushes a narrative saying that trust is almost like paper thin at this point, because any small mishap or sign of doing things that are not of the particular side may just render you a traitor, and if you're not lucky to have me around you, I might as well be dead. But anyway, the story kind of just takes a different turn, kind of setting the tone for the events going forward, because we get to see another pivotal character at some point also take a very heroic fall, and albeit it's not revealed to you all at first, but when it does happen, it does set you on the path of a bona fide YN. Now, this next part of our journey takes us into our very first newly introduced map location, which is known as Driftwater, and we are going to be running a series of waves with a couple insurgents before we get to, the main boss fight. At this point, the game is doing its level best to kind of fill you in on a couple of the blanks and the gaps that you may not completely have gotten all the way through the intro, and kind of just trying to patch the story together as we go along, kind of explaining a couple things about the new locations that you're at, and a couple of folklore stories, especially with Tiago in the back narrating about a legend of the fisherman. Now, before I get into the fisherman, let's just say there ain't no fish, because if you look down when you just walk through Driftwater, all the fish are literally at the freaking shore and they're all dead. Now, if this is such a fisherman, I don't think he's doing a good job or he's making enough money, but that's besides the point. The thing is, this so-called fisherman is an altered who's dressed like a fisherman, a little bit of more like I know what you did last summer vibes, but he knows exactly that he's just running with this whole tale that everybody is making up of him, and he's running with it. So this is more or less like your first boss fight when you first fight Gauss when you start the base game, kind of teaching you about what exactly to expect going forward, that all the enemies that you thought were cool, that were kind of like soft and shit, they're not there no more, because Shauna's vision takes us directly into a brand new world. And before the ice cave, we can even start connecting the dots about what she saw. The game throws a new curveball our way, and that would be the fisherman. Now, Again, I've already iterated this, but this guy is not your run-of-the-mill bullet sponge captain. He's altered, but he's got tricks that make the old base game captains feel like warm-up dummies. Elemental control, devastating AoE attacks, and the movement that keeps you on the back foot if you're not careful. I'll be real, he slapped me around a bit on my first go because my build wasn't the best. My old build from the New Horizon days, yeah, it didn't cut it. So I went back, swapped in gear and better anomaly power scaling, turned my mods to deal with this crowd control tactics, and came back swinging. And when I finally dropped him, it felt so good because I was like, I know that there's more ahead of me, but I am definitely kicking some ass right now. This is Worldslayer telling me loud and clear that if you don't adapt, you're kind of toast. I will say that the game does a good job at kind of easing you into the combat, scaling it as you go, knowing that at this particular point in time, though you may be experienced, knowing that we took a long ass break from this game because there was practically no content for almost like a year, it kind of nudges you a little bit into that particular curiosity of what else could my build do, because clearly my old build is not, you know, it's not the shit no more. Like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna change it? What do I do to optimize it? And these new bosses kind of allow you to kind of experiment with those build options and build ideas, because now you're fighting against a whole different set of enemies. What you thought worked before isn't really, you know, cutting it right now, and so you gotta change tactics, adapt, otherwise you probably will not finish the game. And because you want the best loot, you're keeping it up on the highest ascension level. And for me, I was always playing it on the highest ascension level as I went through, because I just want legendaries. I don't have time to, you know, the purple stuff and the blue stuff and the green and, you know, the gray. I'm all about the gold, brother. Like, listen, I'm all about the gold because it's all you want. It's got the best mods, because now you're no longer just trying to get tier 2 mods, you're trying to stack up on tier 3 mods. So every legendary you get is very important. Okay, so we made it. We took down the fisherman, but what's next? This opens the door for us to push deeper into insurgent territory. The resistance here isn't like anything in the base game. Smarter positioning, coordinated pushes, and more altered in the mix. That path eventually leads us to the Executioner, an insurgent brute whose name isn't just for show. This guy is built like a walking tank and swings a weapon that looks like it could split the drop pod in half. The fight is pure chaos, waves of ads, tight corners, and an arena that forces you to keep moving or die. But here's the thing. By now, I'm in the Worldslayer groove. The rebuilt loadout's humming, cooldowns are lined up, and my damage rotation is on point. The Executioner falls, and the victory clears the way for the next big objective, finding the missing scientist. But in true Outriders fashion, it isn't as easy as that. You gotta fight through a wave of ads just to get to that point, because now you're trying to get to an elevator that takes you up to the scientist's solitude, or I don't know what you want to call it, his lab, or basically his keep at this point. But all in all, you go through mauling down every single person just to get to that point. At this point, this mission is no longer just any your regular, oh, we gotta find what's happening in the anomaly mission. Now this is like a real situation, life or death. This is basically a vendetta at this point. Like, yo, we gotta get this shit running, or, you know, it's us or them, or it's us or the anomaly at this point. So we gotta get shit moving, and these people are standing in my way. So you go in there decimating every single person, and eventually you do make it to the end. Now notice that we met someone along the way. This guy actually, if you played the base game, at the very first level when you choose your class, you actually do meet him at the same time that you meet Seth for the very first time. So just a little bit of an Easter egg right there. Moving on, our trail for the missing scientist finally leads us into the insurgent stronghold, a place that feels more like a war museum than a base. Frozen walls, makeshift barricades, and a stench of desperation. After fighting through squads of soldiers and pockets of resistance, we reach what looks like a small study tucked away in the heart of the camp, and this is where we expect to find answers. Instead, we find him, sprawled across his desk, lifeless. No signs of a struggle beyond the brutal precision of the kill. This wasn't random, it was personal. And then, that's when it happens. Ereshkigal herself steps into the frame for the very first time. The air changes instantly. She's altered, but not like the captains or even the fishermen we fought earlier. She's operating on an entirely different level. There's an ease to her presence, the kind of confidence that comes from knowing nobody in the room is even close to her league. We exchange words, not many, because she's clearly not interested in conversation, and before I can react, she decides she's done with me. She hurls me into the icy waters below like I'm nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But here's the kicker. Before that little swim, I managed to swipe some critical data from the study, enough for Zahidi to dig into, though it's hard not to think how much more we could have gained if the scientists had still been alive to talk. This isn't just a failed rescue, it's the moment we truly understand what kind of the enemy we're dealing with. The intricacies of the story in Worldslayer are just amazing because it takes you on an emotional roller coaster all the way to more of a defining moment. If we all take it back to what Uncle Ben says to Spider-Man right before he goes to that wrestling match, it says, with great power comes great responsibility. Here we see Ereshkigal, who has developed a godlike complex, and something more of a foreshadowing to what you could possibly become as well if you keep on going down this path of, I'm the only altered and, nobody can stop me. And the game does a good job at kind of compelling you to make certain choices, although they're kind of predetermined for you, but it has you thinking, what would you do in this situation if you really had all this power? And at first it's like, well, I don't have to do too much because I have my crew and everything, but it slowly becomes more of a moral decision as it keeps going, because you're faced with a very harsh choice, and in that moment we don't think logically, we think emotionally, and we have all this power and rage. It needs to go somewhere. And so this is what the hunt for Ereshkigal starts to bring for us. So with Ereshkigal's forces on the move and the planet's climate spiraling further into chaos, we're tasked with tracking her down before whatever she's planning wipes out whatever is left of humanity. Our chase takes us through new environments, Driftwater's flooded ruins, the jagged cliffs of Glacier's Edge, each hiding remnants of the Pack's civilization and clues about their downfall. The deeper we go, the more it becomes obvious Ereshkigal isn't just another warlord, she's tied to the same power that created the Altered, and her endgame is gonna make our war for survival look like a warm-up. By this point in the game, the story has gradually progressed and we're nearing towards the end. The end which kind of sets the defining moment for our Altered, our friends, and the journey that is still yet to be had. Now, we're met with a new person of sorts. In the previous base game, we were rolling with Angst, or as Tiago, couldn't pronounce it, he just called the thing August. And so now we're met with the daughter. The names kind of feel like they were just kind of like thrown out there, like, hey, we'll just call this one father, daughter. Anyway, I digress. And she seems to be a shaman of some sorts who happens to have the ability to see into the future and have visions, just almost like Shauna, except she is more cryptic than Shauna is, and so it kind of gives the game a little bit of edge. Now we're at a point which is I define to myself as a crossroads, and by virtue of this being the crossroads, decisions are being made based on the information that we have and whether this is the best course of action. Now previously at this point, they've sent many messengers to try and broker peace. But of course, the old saying, don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, the insurgents didn't really get that part, so they kind of killed everybody that was sent. However, the daughter has a vision in which this new messenger will not be killed. Air quotes. And this is simply because the truth is being concealed from what's supposed to happen in order for, the peace that everyone has been struggling so hard for to kind of come to pass. And so this involves another one of our very older friends, Shira Goodman. Now this is going to be crazy because at this point in the game, Shira is practically the only surviving person from the age of which our Altered existed from. Everyone else is born free, and she knows the struggle better than anyone. She was there for it. And after having Jakob yanked from our lives, it's kind of heartbreaking to see how the story kind of unfolds going forward. And after this premonition or vision is revealed, we see her jump quickly into action, knowing what must be done. A sacrifice for the greater good. Some might say it might lead you down a darker path, but, well, you'll find out soon enough. Of course, this has to be concealed because if they had told the Altered really early on in the game, this probably would have never happened, because damn right he would have stopped her. It's like, yo, shawty, where you going? Unfortunately, this is not how things play out. Shira has to make the ultimate sacrifice in order for our Altered to fulfill their destiny. And this means that she gets to be taken off the board, which kind of pays a homage to the base game, saying that everything that was no longer is, everything that's going to be is what is to become. That sounded like a fortune cookie. I'm sorry. But that's just how I saw it, and this is how I interpret this particular scene, because we reached this particular point in the game where now it's, can we have peace? Can we stop all this senseless fighting? And of course, I'm going there as an altered, completely unaware to what's going on, and plot twist, I don't have all the information to go off of. All I have is here and now, and hopefully things don't go to shit. But unfortunately, it did. And this kind of sets us down a downward spiral of absolute rage, anger, and a feel for power to stop this from ever happening again. All of a sudden, we've become the very thing that we're hunting. And this only puts us in the best position because we're no longer thinking like prey, but more like a predator. Not the Diddy kind. And of course, the scene plays out in the most dramatic way possible. Arch enemies coming face to face after long battles on the other side of the war zone. And of course, Ereshkigal, thinking as a military strategist, sees the perfect opportunity to take off her greatest opposer, Shira. And without a doubt, she takes that shot and she doesn't miss. What she doesn't know is she just pissed off someone entirely new. Someone who she hoped would be an ally, simply because they are all the same make and model. And I mean by them being altered. This sets a different precedent, saying it's not about blood, it's about the family that we choose to have going forward. And you just took one of mine, so now I'm gonna have your head on a silver platter. I don't even eat meat. I'm vegetarian. I'm not. But you get my point. As you would guess, this sets the pace up for the final section of the game, in which will lead us to our monumental boss fight. The defining moment as to whether we become crazed with power, or do we fight the urge to develop this godlike complex? Well, you're about to find out, just as I found out the hard way. This scene hits the hardest because at this point, we practically have nothing else left to lose. Everything that we've known and had before this is all gone. And with the very final piece of my life that was before I woke up altered, is now laying in a pool of blood before me, gasping for air, trying to survive long enough to say final goodbyes. Shira's death hit hardest because she has been the rock of this particular war since I went into cryo. And I'm speaking now a little bit into like kind of like first person, I guess, but only because of my connection to my character and the story at foot. It sets a different tone, thinking about all the times that were perfect and the things that we looked forward to. A future that she'll never get to see now, but is very much a big part of why it exists. And this enrages the altered, because it's no longer about we have to survive. Now, it's actually time to end the war. Our second meeting with Ereshkigal wasn't a conversation. It was straight up war zone. Her control over the forces is absolute, and she bends the battlefield to her will. The fight is brutal, relentless, and even after we win, it doesn't feel like a victory. As I blaze through the battlefield, wiping out waves of insurgents until I get to the final stand, which would be a 1v1 showdown with Ereshkigal herself, a lot is on the line here. If I die, I have to start again. And it's annoying because it doesn't save fight progress like most other big difficult games, but if this fight is difficult for you and you just keep dying, you're just gonna keep dying, bro. But in actuality, if the altered actually dies, the thing is, it's game over. So you're not just fighting for yourself at this point, you're fighting for everyone. And you have to take the wills and hopes of everybody who believes in you fixing this entire mess and duke it out with one final big bad before you call the curtains. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. The final battle. Yeah, the final battle is between your altered and Ereshkigal herself. You've seen what she can do, none of this is a surprise to you. However, you don't just exactly how powerful and how gifted she is in controlling the anomaly? Well, you're about to discover this firsthand. But of course, once again, my build was up to snuff, and I was able to defeat this bitch 100% in the very first try. So, like I said in all of my videos, when you encounter these fights, please do not go thinking that you're gonna one-up them the way you see them right now, because my build is optimized to take on anybody and anything. You have to work around figuring out what works for you the best, or you might have to call in for reinforcements. There's no shame in the game. However, my shit was clean, and yeah, let's just say I did that shit. Fight to the death. Obviously, no one here is leaving alive. There's only going to be one loser and one victor. Of course, the loser being dead, and it not being me, because I'm the main star of the story. Anyway, we see just how powerful Ereshkigal is and how she's able to manipulate and use an anomaly to her will. This kind of sets a different kind of pace for everyone that we fought in the past, because you come to realize that everybody else was more like a grunt. They feel like Goss at this point, because she's on a different other level. She has multiple instances in which it's a lot of AoE attacks, which to some degree cannot be dodged, or then again, it may be just me from being clunky and having very poor, sense of feel. But I digress. The fight was quite energetic. It was fun. It was refreshing to have to be able to think new ways to defeat this boss. And Worldslayer just closes off on an amazing note, because not only do we see the conclusion of this battle leading to what was promised as the better future for Enoch, we see it open up a whole new world to what could be a sequel or even a spanning game series if they choose to follow it up.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
This is the perfect sum up to what exactly this scene looks like, because all of a sudden she went from being almighty and powerful to squirming and saying, "Wait, hold on, don't you feel the power? We're better than everybody." I was like, yo, chill, bro. Like, you were like hyped up to be this big bad, and now all of a sudden you ain't shit. But of course, as you can tell, I'm standing on business. Standing on business all the time, every time. And of course, the decision to kill Ereshkigal is one that comes with no moral conflict, because she was a piece of shit and she needed to die. But what does this mean for our Altered? Does this mean that we are the most powerful Altered alive to exist ever? What does this mean for us and for everybody else around us? And now that the world's biggest threat has kind of been contained, is there even a need for an Altered anymore? The next section of the game kind of helps you answer this question. But from my personal experience, it helped answer a question by leaving more questions. I don't know how that makes sense, but that's basically what happens. And this concludes Worldslayer, an amazing DLC. It's a shame it only got one DLC, but I guess if you're gonna do one DLC, you gotta do it right? And not only did they give us one DLC, they gave us another endgame activity, and this is the Trial of Tarya Gratar. This will be the new endgame that keeps you busy and going until People Can Fly Studios and Square Enix decide, hey, you know that one game that we did together? Let's do another one. Hopefully it's not too long, because you find that having gone through these levels and eventually reaching towards the end, you're not too far from being the most powerful, that everything else just kind of feels like a waste of time to go through right now. So here we are. A befitting conclusion to an already amazing game. A game that was done dirty. A game that was not given the chance it truly deserved. My hope in making this video is that you go back and play Outriders with open eyes, an open heart, and of course an open mind, because you will find every single bit of joy, I promise you, in this game that you have been searching for so desperately, and everything else that kind of came along the way. Coming to realize that the formula of live service games isn't as bad as what's been made out to be, but it can actually be good if done right. So as this video fades out, as we get into the final section of the DLC Worldslayer, as well as the Trial of Tarya Gratar, I figured it's about time that I let you listen to this last part.
I can't.
Have only given them the tools.
The father. What he found under your lost city,
Don't go looking for this. We'll only find horror. I've given you walls. Safe here.
But for how long? The anomaly will just keep getting worse. One day it'll find a way through, and I'm not gonna sit around and wait for it.
If you leave this place, you'll not be able to come back.
I know. I know.
And there we have it. The curtain closes on Worldslayer's campaign, but the story doesn't end here. The true test of an Outrider begins in the endgame, the Trial of Tarya Gratar, new apocalypse loot, and the brutal grind to god tier builds. That's coming next, a full deep dive into Worldslayer's endgame with breakdowns, builds, and strategies to dominate every encounter. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications and join the dojo as we step into the next phase of this journey. This is just the beginning of something bigger. Until then, stay sharp, stay dangerous, and I'll catch you in the next one. Onycs Shinobi, out.